Morning. It's August, I don't know, 3rd or 4th. And, I'm sorry, 5th. Wow. So I'm, late on my July post, but then I'm usually late. Been traveling. I'm in Arizona now. Back in Arizona now. Left my cabin in northern Minnesota. And it's hot. August in Mesa, Arizona is hot. And to make it worse, one of my air conditioners is out. The one to the kitchen and dining room. But the one to my bedroom office space is working. So I'll get that fixed. Today I want to replay a lecture that I did a while back on propaganda. Mostly because what I'm seeing in the news is unadulterated propaganda. And I did make one mistake in this video. I said the printing press came in 15 something and it was 14, 16 something. But if you put up with that difference, here's the history of propaganda. And when it finishes, I'll have some more thoughts on today. So thank you. And here's the video. If I can find out where.
Hi, today I want to talk about propaganda. The techniques that are used by the propagandists, the effects of propaganda, and the power that propaganda has. The goal of the propagandist is to control the minds of the masses of people. Until recently, until the modern age, people had to be persuaded in small crowds by public speeches. Things like monumental palaces, churches, statues, and theater were used in ancient Egypt and Sumeria, China, India, Greece, and Rome. In the Western Hemisphere, magic totems, Easter Islands, giant heads, Mayan pyramids, Mississippian mounds, and mythic stories that travel through time. But it's modern technology that brought the new powers to controlling the masses. And for any message or any ideology to qualify as being distributed through propaganda, propaganda needs 3 elements. All 3 of these elements need to be present. The first is simplification. Take a complex issue and boil it down to its simplest form, to a black and white issue. Condense it into slogans and a simple explanation. And then once you've found that simple form, repeat it. That's what Fritz Hippler, the head of the Nazi film industry, said, is once you've found the simple form, repeat it, every day, repeat it. And then the third characteristic is propaganda has to have somebody to blame. It has to have a scapegoat. You have to show yourself as heaven sent and your enemy as the devil, Hitler once said. You must have someone or something to blame. So 3 elements of propaganda are simplification, repetition, and having a scapegoat or someone to blame. Propaganda is not new in the world. Modern propaganda really began with the development of the printing press in 1540. Nobody really used the printing press as a propaganda tool until Martin Luther. What happened is in 1517, Luther nailed his 95 theses to the door of the church at Wittenberg. It was on All Hallows Eve, our Halloween, and this was his protest against some of the practices of the Catholic Church of the day. The most irritating one to Luther was the selling of indulgences. This was a way to get St. Peter's Cathedral built. You could buy relatives away out of purgatory, shorten their time, that kind of thing. Anyway, Luther had no intentions of starting a Reformation or anything. He was a Catholic priest. He was a president of the university at Wittenberg. And when he nailed his 95 theses, it wasn't so much as a protest as it was just what you did. You nailed your thesis to the door so that the other scholars and the students in the university could read it, and then you could discuss it. But what happened is a local printer got a hold of it, printed copies, and started distributing them all over the place. And it's those pamphlets that really began the Protestant Reformation, got Luther in the Diet of Worms, where he got called up before before Pope George and the Emperor, and told he needed to recant, and that began the Protestant Reformation. And the Catholic Church, the word propaganda from the Catholic Church's response to the Protestants, it's often imperfectly called the Counter-Reformation, but it started with the Council of Trent in 1545 to 1563. It transformed Catholic doctrine and practices, but the word comes from the Cairo missionary work in 1622. The Sacred Congregation of the Propagation of the Faith, or the Sacred Congregation de Propaganda Fide. And that's where the word propaganda comes from. It comes from this society that was formed to address abuses of natives in the New World, and we've had the word ever since. Our first in the United States, our first experience with real propaganda probably started with the rhetoric of the Revolution. I used to teach or had a lecture when I taught history that was titled "The Rhetoric of Revolution." The American Revolution would have began in churches and in taverns. Without beer, it probably would have never happened. But people got together and started talking, and the rhetoric that they used was the rhetoric the Whigs had used to get power from the king. It really began all the way back with the Magna Carta in 1215, when the English nobles forced King John to sign the Magna Carta. I mean, King John was doing something that was just terrible. He was actually taxing those nobles 20%. Can you imagine 20% of their income? And they were so incensed at that horrid abuse of their property rights that they forced King John to sign the Magna Carta, the first document or social contract, and that began this rhetoric, this language of freedom and liberty, and it grew in England for hundreds of years. And with the French philosophers and to men like John Locke and Adam Smith. Adam Smith published his Wealth of Nations in 1776, one of the first treatises written on free trade and free enterprise. But it was Thomas Paine who was the great orator and who wrote these pamphlets that that people passed around that really started the American Revolution. And of course, they used these posters. So pamphlets and posters were the first kinds of methods of promoting some sort of revolution or some sort of movement. The abolitionist movement used posters and newspapers. The most famous, The Liberator, was William Lloyd Garrison's paper. He was a staunch and determined abolitionist, and Frederick Douglass published his autobiography at the time, and so newspapers, books like Douglass's autobiography, and books like Uncle Tom's Cabin. But they spread the abolitionist movement, and of course Garrison's and Frederick Douglass's speeches. They greatly influenced both sides of the issue. At that time, it was the Republican Party, it was the radical faction of the Republican Party that were the abolitionists, while the Democratic Party, primarily dominated by Southern Democrats, supported slavery. They didn't like the abolitionist movement, and so they had posters like this one. It was not until the 1950s that the two parties began to kind of switch roles on the issue of civil rights for blacks. Strom Thurmond led the Southern Democrats to split the Democratic Party. His faction of the Democratic Party he called the Dixiecrats. But by the 1960s, it was the Democratic Party that became the party of African Americans identified with, and so almost a complete turnaround. Of course, it was the World Wars that really brought propaganda to the forefront of culture. During World War I, the U.S. and Britain used propaganda extensively, primarily posters and pamphlets. The Germans were much more reluctant in World War I to use propaganda. They somehow thought it was just a little bit below them to use propaganda. Was often comic in nature. If they had a scapegoat, it was the Bolsheviks, the Russian Bolsheviks, more than anybody else. This poster that says, "The choice storm sweeps through the country, Bavarian white-blue against Russian red." And this poster by the Bavarian People's Party. And so in World War I, it was, at least from the German perspective, the Russians were the great evil, and not just any Russian, but the Bolsheviks, or the founders of the communist revolution. It took propaganda to a whole new level. It brought the technique to the forefront of warfare. This is the first war to use film as a weapon to forge ideology and the means of controlling the masses. Both sides used propaganda. These posters are representative, but there were hundreds and hundreds of posters. Really the power of film, the hypnotic power of film, that brought an awesome power to the propagandists. Prior to World War II, people had to be persuaded individually through print, or swayed in limited-sized crowds by speeches, but film could speak to the masses while touching each heart in the masses individually. Film promoted passive listening rather than the critical analysis that's inherent in reading. The propagandists could strike directly at the heart of the individual, enabling control of their emotions and control of the masses. Germany began with documentary films showing German industry strength and military victories. Documentaries included speeches by Hitler and Nazi Party leaders, but the Nazis also created a different kind of propaganda film, much more insidious. The most famous is the hate film The Eternal Jew. This was directed by Fritz Hippler, who was Hitler's film or director of the entire German film industry. Hitler and his propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, they wanted the German people to be more anti-Semitic than they were. They thought, in Europe of that day, anti-Semitism wasn't anything new. The French were probably more anti-Semitic, and this didn't please Hitler or Goebbels. They intended to create a mass movement of the hatred of the Jew. The following film clip is a short sample of some of the content of this 65-plus minute film, which was shown repeatedly in German movie theaters and throughout their conquered territories.
The campaign in Poland gave us the opportunity to really get to know the Jewish people. Nearly 4 million Jews live here in Poland, but they won't be found among the rural population, nor have they suffered from the chaos of war as has the native Pole. They set it out indifferently in the gloomy streets of the Polish ghetto. Yet within an hour after the German occupation, they were back in business. We Germans had a look at the Polish ghetto 25 years ago. This time our eyes are sharpened by our experience in the last few decades. Unlike in 1914, we no longer see just the most grotesque and comical of these questionable ghetto figures. This time we recognize that there's a plague here, a plague that threatens the health of the Aryan peoples. Richard Wagner once said, "The Jew is the demon behind the corruption of mankind." And these pictures prove it. These physiognomies immediately refute the liberal theories about the equality of all who bear a human countenance. The Jews alter their outward appearance when they leave their Polish haunts for the rich world. The hair, beard, skullcap, and kaftan make the Eastern Jew recognizable to everyone. Should he remove them, only sharp-eyed people can spot his racial origins. An essential trait of the Jew is that he always tries to hide his origin when among non-Jews. Wherever rats turn up, they carry destruction to the land by destroying mankind's goods and nourishment and spreading diseases and plagues, such as cholera, dysentery, leprosy, and typhoid fever. They are cunning, cowardly, and cruel, and usually appear in massive hordes. They represent the elements of sneakiness and subterranean destruction among animals, just as the Jews do among mankind. The parasite nation of Judah is responsible for a large part of international crime. The eternal law of nature, keeping one's race pure, is the legacy which the National Socialist movement leaves to the German nation forever. In this spirit, the unified German people march on into the future.
Responded to Axis powers propaganda, this war of ideas, effectively and quite creatively. General George Marshall called on the famous Hollywood director Frank Capra, whose movies like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Meet John Doe, It Happened One Night, were films mixed with comedy and a heartwarming message of an ordinary American taking on the system and winning. His name was to become part of the film jargon itself. This type of film is called Capra-esque. Capra used the enemy's propaganda films as the material to create a series of 7 films called Why We Fight. The film's purposes were to justify going to war and to encourage people to join the military and participate in the war effort. Capra turned the enemy's films against them in a war of symbols and ideas. The following clip is from the first of the 7 films, Prelude to War. Notice it's called an informational film, not a propaganda film. It calls for and it also, toward the end, calls for the utter defeat of the enemy. This would later haunt President Harry Truman when no possibility of a negotiated peace was possible with Japan. The Japanese culture could not save face with a complete surrender by its emperor, and the American people would not accept anything less than complete and utter surrender. An invasion of the island of Japan would cause untold Allied casualties, so the decision to drop the atomic bomb was made. Here are some clips from Capra's first film. Be sure to read all the credits and the text as you watch it.
causes and events leading up to our entry into the war. Well, what are the causes? Why are we Americans on the march? Is it because of Pearl Harbor? Is that why we are fighting? Or is it because of Britain? What are these two worlds of which Mr. Wallace spoke? The free and the slave. Let's take the free world first, our world. How did it become free? Only through a long and unceasing struggle inspired by men of vision. Moses, Muhammad, Confucius, Christ. All believed that in the sight of God, all men were created equal. And from that there developed a spirit among men and nations, which is best expressed in our own Declaration of Freedom. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It is the cornerstone upon which our nation was built, and the ideal of all the great liberators. Washington, Jefferson, Garibaldi, Lafayette, Kosciuszko, Bolivar, Lincoln. Lighthouses lighting up a dark and foggy world.
That government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
But what of this other world? Here men insisted that progress lay in killing freedom. Here they were putting out the lighthouses, one by one. Here the march of history was reversing itself. In Italy it began when an ambitious rabble-rouser set his followers marching on Rome. In Germany they called the new order National Socialism, or Nazism. In Italy they had a shorter word, fascism. In Japan, they had lots of names for it. The new era of enlightenment, the new order in Asia, the co-prosperity sphere. But no matter how you slice it, it was just plain old-fashioned militaristic imperialism. The Japs would get the prosperity, and the others would get the coal. They say trouble always comes in threes. Take a good close look at this trio. Remember these faces. Remember them well. If you ever meet them, don't hesitate.
Eine wahrhaftige Weltenschauungspartei sein. Und zweitens, Sie wollten, Herr...
Stop thinking and follow me, cried Hitler. I will make you masters of the world. And the people answered, Heil! Heil! Stop thinking and believe in me, bellowed Mussolini, and I will restore the glory that was Rome. And the people answered, Duce, Duce. Stop thinking and follow your God Emperor, cried the Japanese warlords, and Japan will rule the world. And the people answered, Banzai, Banzai. Applauding on cue the words of the leaders.
Each system did away with free speech and free assembly. Each system did away with a free press and substituted a press controlled by the party. Through their ministries of propaganda, each took complete control of the theater, the movies, the radio. Every cultural activity and every channel of information was controlled by the most important members of the party. Each did away with free courts and trial by jury, and substituted courts and judges run by the party.
deutsches Volk hilft dir selbst. Jeder soll helfen.
Their leaders told them that they were supermen. Herrenvolk, the Nazis called it. The master race, destined to rule all other peoples on earth. Take a good look at these humorless men. These were to be the rulers of the ruling race.
Leben, auch ihr bürgerliches Dasein ist jetzt sicher in diesem nationalsozialistischen Staat.
Obey us blindly, and you will attain your rightful place in the world. All other people will be your slaves. That's what they promised them. That Americans, Chinese, Russian, South Americans, all free peoples would work for them and make them rich. And how they ate it up. We shall restore the glory that was Rome. Today we rule Germany. Tomorrow the world. The Pacific is ours. For this is what we are fighting. Freedom's oldest enemy. The passion of the few to rule the many. This isn't just a war. This is the free people's life and death struggle against those who would put them back into slavery. The free peoples of America and Britain, of Russia and China, of Canada, Australia, and all the 30 United Nations that have sworn that man shall still remain free. That is the cause in which we fight. We lose it, and we lose everything. Our homes, the jobs we want to go back to, the books we read, the very food we eat, the hopes we have for our kids, the kids themselves. They won't be ours anymore. That's what's at stake. It's us or them. The chips are down. Two worlds stand against each other. One must die, one must live. 170 years of freedom decrees our answer.
The American citizens today now constitute one of the most propagandized people in the history of the world, with things like Smokey the Bear and Just Say No to drugs, Smelly Pukey, Tea Staining Habit, Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute, This Is Your Brain on Drugs, Take a Bite Out of Crime. The movies Bambi and Fern Gully are classic propaganda films. Bambi takes forest management, simplifies it. I don't know how many times I've seen Bambi. At least 30, I think, or more. The scapegoat is fire and hunters. And we're still reeling from Smokey the Bear and Bambi. We took fire out of the forest for over 100 years, and now our forests are full of fuel. And when they do start on fire, we can't stop them. Overpopulations of white-tailed deer in eastern states are almost a plague. Propaganda is not a disinterested search for truth. In 1965, Jacques Ellul published this book, Propaganda, The Formation of Men's Attitudes. And a half century of increasing propaganda later, it's still a definitive work on the subject. No one's written a better analysis of the effects on the human mind of propaganda, and to end this lecture, I'd like to read you Ellul's final paragraph, his ultimate conclusion, after analyzing almost every aspect of propaganda, how it works and how it works on the mind. Last paragraph, even though there's pages and pages of appendices in the book after this, but this is Ellul's concluding paragraph, his final conclusion. The only truly serious attitude, serious because the danger of man's destruction by propaganda is serious. Serious because no other attitude is truly responsible and serious. The only serious attitude you can have about propaganda is to show people the extreme effectiveness of the weapon used against them, to rouse them to defend themselves by making them aware of their frailty and their vulnerability, instead of soothing them with the worst illusion, that of a security that neither man's nature nor the techniques of propaganda permit him to possess. It's merely convenient to realize that the side of freedom and truth for man has not yet lost, but that it may well lose, and that in this game, and what game? The game of freedom, the game of knowing the truth. In this game, propaganda is undoubtedly the most formidable power, acting in only one direction, toward the destruction of truth and freedom. And this last phrase is the most powerful, no matter what the good intentions or the goodwill may be of those who manipulate it. Ellul's conclusion is it doesn't matter whether you're trying to put 10 million people in ovens or you're trying to convince people to say no to drugs. The result is the same. Propaganda, whether you have good intentions or evil intentions, is the greatest force toward the destruction of truth and freedom. And we, in America today, are the most propagandized people ever to exist on the planet. We've been subjected to more propaganda through the media than any other people have ever been subjected to. We have our own scapegoats. The anti-smoking campaign is probably the most effective propaganda campaign ever implemented. And Hitler said it's easier to convince people of a big lie than a little lie. And in the anti-smoking campaign, they've actually convinced us that secondhand smoke is just as bad for you as sucking on a cigarette, which is really logically kind of silly. And then we have a scapegoat. There's only two things you can do to a scapegoat: exile them or kill them. Under Jewish law, the high priest would lay his hands on two goats and confess the sins of the people over the goats. That's where this word scapegoat comes from. And one of the goats would be sent off into the wilderness and the other one sacrificed. Hitler, he blamed the Jews and he exiled them to Eastern Poland concentration camps and then killed them. Smokers, what are they to blame for? They're to blame for bad air. And so we exiled them first to smoking sections on campus, and then a couple of years ago we exiled them off campus. And it's a little hypocritical when you think about it, because how many of us drive to school in an internal combustion engine, dumping more crap in the air than a smoker could in smoking all day? But they haven't exiled us. Propaganda is a powerful force that acts toward the destruction of truth and freedom. And I think freedom is the most important gift, right, that is the one thing that God protects above everything else. Thank you. Go to the discussion forum and let me know what you think.
I delivered this lecture on propaganda
I think I made it back in 2005 or something like that, or maybe 2004. I was in my mind, I was responding to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. I was quite troubled or impressed. I don't know, but with Colin Powell's speech to the United Nations, and how he felt so bad afterwards that he'd been a tool in that propaganda campaign. Even he had been, I guess, hoodwinked into weapons of mass destruction. But it's since then that I've become even more concerned. Not only is propaganda, in the films and all of that, with social media and the polemic nature of our politics in America, we're falling just more and more into the need, the individual need for propaganda. We want complicated things made simple, complicated issues made simple, so that even the less ingenious mind can understand what I mean, as Fritz Hippler put it once. He was Hitler's propaganda minister, film minister. In watching the political campaigns of the last few years, the scapegoating has become, central. The Democrats are evil, the Republicans are evil. Liberals are evil, conservatives are evil. Everybody's to blame. Life's not simple. And the world we live in isn't simple. And the more we realize as the people of this nation, of this world, that stuff's just not simple. The more we fall in to the power of propaganda. And more, it seems to me that that politics has become more and more about power. Those early ideals of the founding fathers of public virtue, the idea that you serve the people. Every soldier, every sheriff, every politician swears an oath to defend the Constitution. And I'm beginning to wonder if anyone's even read the damn thing. I'm not saying that we need to go back to the to our formal lives. Our history is not pretty. But the ideals that are spoken of in documents like the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Cicero's discourses, Plato's Republic, Socrates. Socrates had 3 tests for any kind of communication, any kind of message. Number 1 is what you're going to say the truth. Have you checked it out? Is it true? Or is it just hearsay? Before you talk, is what you're delivering true? Or is it rumor? 2, is what you're saying, something good about someone or something bad. And 3, does it matter? Breaking those 3 things is the essence of gossip. We are so propagandized now that I think Elul may be right that there's no hope. I don't know. But I keep hoping that there's hope. Hitler said the great masses of the people will fall victim to a big lie rather than a little one. And it seems, I don't care, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, theocrat, monarchist, I don't have anything against a monarchy if the king is perfect. If you read the Bible, that's the promise. That a monarchy is coming and the king is perfect. I'm not comfortable with democracy. The voice of the mob. Hitler said that with propaganda, we spoke and as a propagandist, we speak the language of the masses. But at the same time, in speaking the language of the masses, we touch the heart and can control the masses. Journalism has always been problematic. We've always had left and right publications that argue with each other, and that's fine. We need civil discourse, not a discourse of guilt and blame. I don't see it coming. But like Elul in his last paragraph, I'm hoping that I've made you aware with the history of propaganda of the vulnerability and your weakness to the tools of propaganda that are coming at you all the time on the social media, on the national media. And it's not just the opposition of opinions that's gone. It's that we only listen to one, whichever opinion we like, because that's where the propagandist powers are. And scapegoating divides us. And we become more and more divided all the time. And if we could just remember that the mantra of this nation is that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are equal. Under the law. And I know that justice is green and politics are green. And for the most part, it's about power. But I know that out there, not only in America, but in the world, that there are people who love the truth, who want and desperately need freedom. And propaganda is undoubtedly the most formidable power, acting in only one direction, toward the destruction of truth and freedom. Well, I'll try to find a lighter note for the next podcast that will be in August, and actually be an August podcast. I think I'm going to try. I'm finally settled a little bit here in Arizona, at least for a couple more months. Hoping to be teaching. And, I'll hopefully find some time to do my podcast sometime. Thanks for listening.